Hey, it's me. Just finished watching Captain Marvel with Shania. We went to the cinema like literally 3 hours ago. So I want to review the movie. I don't really want to. I use the term review loosely because it's just more going to be like what I thought of it. I'm not a film student, nothing like that. I'm just someone who enjoys watching movies. I could have watched many more in my time, so I don't know everything. But yeah, no, these Marvel movies are something I love to watch. I often talk about them. And I mean, hey, Captain Marvel, I mean, when you're getting these god tier characters coming in, loads of excitement around it. Obviously, International Women's Day, big deal as well for the character. A lot of movement, and obviously literally building up to probably the most hyped movie of this decade, maybe. Whether you're a fan of like comic book movies or not. Marvel at the moment has been pretty huge, needless to say. But yeah, so I'm going to do what I can, trying to remember it off the top of my head. I would have taken notes, but man, honestly, I probably would have had a worse review if I took notes, because I would have missed half the movie, because I'm just absolutely terrible. I don't know if I'm even going to bother doing spoilers. For now, I'll do non-spoilers. And maybe, if I keep filming this for longer than 10 minutes, maybe I'll include spoilers. So what did I think about Captain Marvel? So this might be a bit strange, but to actually talk about how I felt about it, I'm going to say how I felt leaving it, right? Like at the end of the movie, how it felt. Before I actually talk about sort of the whole movie in general, I just want to sort of like explain how I left the cinema. When the credits rolled, after everything happened, the final act wrapped up, etc. I sort of felt a bit, okay. I guess that's the best way to explain it. I was, okay, that was nice. It was a very Marvel movie. When I walked out, I kind of compared it to the likes of, like, say, Ant-Man, which I guess there's nothing wrong with an Ant-Man, but there's nothing great about an Ant-Man, And that's not me necessarily saying that Captain Marvel isn't great as a movie. But it did just feel very much like an advert, a preview of what we're going to see from her, or what to expect from her in Endgame, Avengers Endgame. And unfortunately, I just got a phone call. And unfortunately, that's a problem that Captain Marvel kind of fell into, and I do feel bad for them, because that's an extremely difficult job. You like I said, one of the biggest movies, arguably, the most hyped movie of this decade, arguably, and you kind of need to establish this new character, a woman, like I said earlier, god tier, and you need to make them fit in with the whole cinematic universe that's already here, but give it its own importance. That's not an easy job, right? Especially when, it is kind of just waiting for Endgame, and it's like, okay, we know Captain Marvel's going to be here, let's get to know Captain Marvel, let's not just throw her in. We want people to sort of see what she can do, what to expect with her, so we don't have to do all of that in Endgame. I get all that, and I don't feel sorry for them, but I don't want to be in their position, because I don't want to be the one who has to write that story to get all these loose ends, or at least try to get all these loose ends. But unfortunately, what happens with those movies that Marvel have been doing to try and get everything connected and together, is it loses the opportunity to make its own sort of story, very a bit more fleshed out, something with a bit more, I don't know, just a bit more magic, I guess. I don't want to say magic in a typical sort of Disney way, but you sort of leave the cinema like, oh man, I wish I was part of this movie. I felt, obviously people tastes are different, but say like, that's why I think Guardians had a lot of, because it wasn't known, a lot of people don't really know Guardians didn't know the Guardians of the Galaxy, right, when it came out. I don't think anyone really knew, but that was a benefit, because there wasn't anything in the past that they had to kind of, there was no measuring stick, and they could sort of do whatever they want. They could be as creative as they wanted. And unfortunately, Captain Marvel kind of had to fit into something, right? So, ultimately, I kind of just left. It wasn't a meh. I've left Marvel movies with a meh. It wasn't a meh. It was just more of, okay, you know, like, I'll repeat myself. It wasn't okay. It was good. You know, so those are my general feelings about the movie after I watched it, right? That's how I left the cinema feeling. Now, that doesn't mean, like, I'm not at all saying it was a horrible movie, unwatchable, but it's probably not something I'm in a rush to watch again, right? But so, the actual movie, I mean, being a Marvel movie, you know, there is a certain standard for the CGI, you know, and the effects in general. And not to mention Captain Marvel, you know, having the powers she does, how visually stimulating they are, more to the point, you know. They had a hard job, and honestly, in terms of sort of showing her and not letting the CGI of her powers, and if you see like that kind of golden bluey like aura around her, it's subtle enough that it doesn't just completely cover her, so you can still see the body. But, you know, it's enough to sort of be like, wow, okay, you can really feel the presence of it. And it is very pleasing to watch. Her actual, like, photon blasts, you do with my white hands, mess up the lighting. But, you know, the actual photon blasts, they look kind of cool. They're kind of pulsating, you know, some nice artwork from the actual effects artists. You know, it was... we've never really seen anything like this before. I mean, I guess kind of Iron Man's blasts, but they had to make them different, you know, because his beams, they're just beams. I really wouldn't call them blasts, but these, they really felt more natural, I guess. It wasn't coming from a machine, it was coming from a person, right? And I don't know, you could kind of see that. But that's not to say the CGI didn't have its faults, you know. Sometimes the people, unfortunately, you know, it just happens. Sometimes the people looked a bit rubbery. In some like full body CGI moments where, I don't know, someone's floating or something. I'm not going to really spoil it. I mean, there is a space bit. I don't know if that's a spoiler. People floating in space looks weird. The actual scenery, you know, there's definitely been better work in terms of scenery, like things like Thor Ragnarok, things like Guardians 1 and 2. The actual, like, building of the sets, you know, there wasn't much going on there in Captain Marvel. However, you know, I digress. This movie is also the first time that we're introduced to the Skrulls. At least, you know, we're seeing them for the first time. And you know what? I'm very happy that they didn't just do complete CGI masks on people. You know, they really hit hard with the actual practical effects. You know, loads of makeup, loads of actual, I don't know what to call it, but, you know, they put stuff on people's faces. And honestly, I really appreciate it. Even though sometimes they looked a bit weird, you know, you could really tell it was fake. You know, you could really tell it was sort of there. You could really tell it was prosthetics. I don't know, like, again, I appreciate it. I'd rather that than, you know, just complete CGI masks. That's a bit better. I will say it did seem the masks got in the way of some of the actors' mouths. It was a bit hard to follow what they were saying at times. And it was actually quite strange, because, I don't know, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but the Skrull seemed to have Cockney and Australian accents, right? You know, and the Cockney people made me feel at home. But then the Australians were just like, why? You know, space. The everlasting vastness of the Down Under. You know, I don't know. It was weird. It was strange. It was funny, though. It didn't really take me out of the movie or anything. It was just funny to hear an Aussie alien, you know? Or a Cockney one, for that matter. But yeah, you know, as far as effects go, I wasn't, you know, obviously Infinity War... huge, like, milestone in terms of CGI, and you know, Captain Marvel was by no means an embarrassment to the franchise. It was very good. Obviously, sort of, I wouldn't even say fell apart, but just fell a bit short at some places, but no way did it, you know, pull me away from the movie or anything like that. So this isn't just a brand new movie in the Marvel franchise, but you're also introducing a new character, right? And that doesn't just mean the superhero, this doesn't just mean new powers, new abilities, whatever, but it's a new character. and this is going to be a big character. So it was really interesting to see what they did with Captain Marvel, right? Because she's going to be talking to Tony Stark, you know, who's very witty and quite sometimes an arsehole, I guess, you know. Or even to, you know, even someone like Star-Lord. I don't know what's happening with Star-Lord in Endgame and stuff, but, you know, these very charismatic characters, right? And even the more shy ones like, I don't know, Captain America, man. Like, I don't know. There's so many characters at this point. It's just interesting to see how they're all a little bit different or what they take from each other. And so the way they did Captain Marvel, you know, it was actually quite nice. At first I was a bit worried because she's very cheeky throughout the whole film, right? And it's very nice. She's quite funny a lot of the time. She's what I never had a sister, but she's what I'd imagine a younger sister to be like, right? Like, just very eager to sort of tease, and very often, you know, there were points, I don't want to say very often, but there were points where she seemed a bit aggressive in terms of how she was coming off, you know, almost like, because the whole thing is that, you know, she needs to get her emotions under control. That's the sort of whole underlying story of it. But she can come off as a bit of like a Tony Stark at times, you know, like I said, he's a bit of an arsehole, and I wouldn't necessarily say she's that bad, like as bad as Tony is, especially in the early Iron Men? I don't know. But she does come off a little bit, you know, I don't want to say hostile, but, you know, like, very close to being an arsehole, I guess. But, you know, they kind of tone it down for after, like, the first act of the movie when she's actually, you know, interacting with Samuel Jackson and stuff. He's more or less the same, but it's nice to see him have a lot more screen time because he is great. Character of Nick Fury, we see a lot more of him actually kind of being like it almost feels like a buddy cop movie at times with him. And it's nice, you know. I felt that Marvel movie kind of lacked that humanity in it at this point. You know, it was nice to sort of, you know, even though it's funny, Captain Marvel's this huge character, but they kind of also bring it back down a bit, you know, back to Earth. There's like a little car chase bit, you know, and it's, oh, okay, so it's not just all fucking planet-sized spaceships and nukes in palms and, you know. But it'll be interesting to see how Captain Marvel, you know, being so cheeky and how she's going to interact with, you know, other similar characters like Tony Stark, you know, because she is going to be a prominent character. And they didn't make her too aggressive, nor did they make it like she's by no means a pushover. She is very cool. And honestly, I have to say, this movie had like one of my favourite moments in an MCU, you know. It had one of those coming of age moments, I guess, where she realizes, man, you know what, I need to step up, you know, very similar to the Spider-Man, you know, lifting up the building that crumbles on him, very similar to the Guardians when, you know, in the first movie with the Power Stone, and he kind of let goes of Peter Quill, let goes of his old family, accepts his new, you know, those moments, right? And man, it was very good. It was great. And now this is the problem with Captain Marvel, right? Why I say it's a bit of a okay movie. Because it's a movie set in older times, it uses a few, and it needs to have some sort of links. There aren't any obnoxious cameos to remind you, oh! Okay. I'm gonna sneeze. That was my superhero coming of age moment. Because it has to link, there aren't obnoxious cameos, but it still does sort of have Coulson and Samuel Jackson, right? So it's not anyone new. And it does introduce some new people, but I can't imagine they're really going to have any influence on what's to come. Whether there's a Captain Marvel 2 or in Endgame, right? And that's why I left feeling a bit, okay, yeah, it's fine. It's because it didn't really create a world that I want to return to, you know? It didn't really make me think about, oh, like, so what were they doing before this? How are they now? How will they be after this situation, right? I only really cared about Captain Marvel. And ultimately, I might even argue that it's only because I know she's going to be in Endgame. If she wasn't going to be in Endgame, I can't say. Like, she wasn't a bad character, but I don't know if I would have cared that much about her. It gets to a point where I don't really care, you know, I don't mean that as harsh as it sounds, but I don't really know how else to say it. I don't really care about the characters surrounding her, you know, other than, I guess, Nick Fury, even Coulson a little bit, but they don't really introduce anyone for me to really care about, you know. I don't really want to say who they introduce because I don't want to spoil anything, but even the people they do introduce, they're only there to hold up Captain Marvel, right? They're like support for her. And again, you know, like, I don't know, they don't really have a moment to themselves, or they don't, I don't know, they don't really, for me, I didn't really feel like they were entirely necessary, other than, you know, to be like, oh, okay, they're here, they will help Captain Marvel, right? But hey, as I'm trying to not spoil it, I can't really go into too much detail about my opinions. But again, even though I left saying, okay, it wasn't bad. I really enjoyed it. I'm excited to see more of Captain Marvel. And, you know, this isn't me trying to shit on it, please. As I said, it had probably one of my favourite MCU sort of hero mode activation moments, I guess, you know. It was definitely a movie that had a moment. You know, it definitely had a moment. And honestly, at this point, I guess those are the things I enjoy the most in these movies. Moments I enjoy in these moments. No, it's something that makes me excited to think how her powers will be handled in Endgame. You know, because it is that Thor level, right? My only thing is I hope she doesn't have too much of an influence in Infinity War. Not because I don't... in Endgame, sorry. Not because I don't like her. It's just I'm very much a sort of stock person, I guess. I want the original 6 to really deal with what's happening, and then they can end this saga, this long saga, and then the future Avengers, you know, Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Black Panther, Doctor Strange, you know, I want them to have their own crisis that they will deal with themselves, you know? That's my only thing. That's my own... I don't want to say worry, because I guess I'll miss all... I don't know. It's a story. You know, I'll live if it happens, right? But that's my only little worry. I want the original 6 to deal with Thanos. But yeah, ultimately, I thought it was good. I wouldn't say it was great, but I know a lot of people are going to love this movie. You know, I can imagine socially it's going to have a huge impact. I know Shania loved it. She definitely seemed to feel a lot more upbeat about it. Felt kind of bad trying to think of what to say in a video and ultimately making her feel like I'm trying to shit on it. I'm not. I just like to be critical. But no, it was good. And I look forward to seeing Captain Marvel in Endgame. He gave us the little nod to let us know she's in there, even though we already knew. But it's good to know that we're being told what to think. I still don't know how to really end these. We're still learning here. We're getting more and more equipment. That's why this video probably looks a little bit better. Hopefully, if people do like this, I'm going to do more reviews. Might have more people with me. And I might have some more fleshed out thoughts. Maybe I'll try to watch a movie more than once before I review it. Or at least take some sort of notes, right? Anyway, guys... Thank you for watching, if anyone watches. Goodbye.